Hey, buddy, watch this.
Hello, Regis Kilbin is the name, and Here's the Storm is the game. And this is my first day one build for Dehaka. I haven't had a ton of time to play him just yet. It's hard finding a match on the public test realm. But this is a build I've theory crafted together and tested a couple times in game, and seems to be working so far, so I wanted to present it to you. I'm calling it the Swarm Dehaka build. This one is really all about staying alive virtually forever with ridiculous amounts of regeneration across the entire build, along with some stun and damage mitigation to boot. So this build is called the Swarm Dehaka build because it's all about getting into the middle of the enemy team, absorbing as much damage as is humanly possible, healing and mitigating that damage, all while your W ability Dark Swarm is active, and lowering its cooldown constantly thanks to some talents, so that you're basically just doing small amounts of damage, dragging people around with your Q, sustaining forever, and setting up your team as kind of a whirling dervish, as our level 13 talent would suggest, a swarm of Zerg all by yourself that's just in the way, causing problems, chipping down health, absorbing hits, and being basically a nightmare for the enemy team to deal with, all while remaining unkillable or virtually unkillable thanks to so many different heals that this kit and these talents in particular provide. So without further delay, I want to run through the build real quickly. The Swarm Dehaka is Tissue Regeneration, Hero Stalker, Symbiosis, Adaptation, Whirling Dervish, Rapid Regeneration, and then finally Hardened Shield at level 20. And I'd like to talk about each of those in a little bit more detail. Starting with the level 1 talent, Tissue Regeneration. Collecting 50 Essence permanently increases your health regeneration by 5. Up to 50. So I've went ahead and done the work here and gotten us full stacks on Tissue Regeneration. Now note that this is a little bit confusing. It says 10 here, even though it says it goes up to 50. That basically means we have 10 stacks of 5. Since it goes up by 5 each time you collect 50, and the max is 50 of 5. That's 10 stacks of 5 is the max. So the labeling in the language here is definitely confusing, but note that 10 is the max. That means that we have increased our regen by 50, so naturally at level 23 it would be 12.45, but it's gone up by 50 thanks to this. And that means we're actually healing for 62 damage per second by default, which is absolutely crazy, right? That's just huge health regen. You're going to be full in virtually no time. You'll see our health bar creeping up slowly there, not really slowly, really quite quickly for just default health regen. So that's constantly going to be going off in fights and keeping you topped off, reducing some pressure on your healer, and giving you just a little bit extra heal when it matters in engagements as well. As far as building those stacks, gathering essence isn't too hard, particularly through the early game. You're just going to pick up a lot of essence from takedowns and minion kills, so it's going to be incidental. You don't necessarily have to try, but you can get it a little faster, and you know, this isn't like all at once. This builds up over time, so even if you don't max out your stacks right away, you're still going to be benefiting from that regeneration pretty quickly, and of course at the end of the game, it's going to be very powerful impact as well. But as far as building stacks is concerned, our level 4 talent can actually help out a little there. Hero Stalker increases the essence gained from takedowns by 150%. Now that might sound like a pretty passive and in fact subpar talent, and I'd have to agree. I think in general the talents at level 4 for Dehaka are somewhat weak. Numbing Eruption seems like the most impactful, but it's just so hard to use and so hard to time that it actually ends up being subpar as well. But Hero Stalker is good because in prolonged engagements where, you know, you pick off a guy and they pick off a guy and there's 1 or 2 kills, every time that happens you're going to get 25 essence, which is half of your max heal here. You'll note right now it says we have 2788 healing stored up from our essence, so cut that in half. That means every hero kill you get is going to be worth, roughly almost 1400 health. and that's pretty fantastic in the late game. That's a substantial heal. That's like half an ancestral healing or something, right? Now, granted, it's a over time heal, so it does take a little while to kick in, but that matters. So it's almost kind of like a Li Ming reset in a sense. Not that you reset all your ability cooldowns, of course, but that you reset that heal every time a hero dies. So if you get one kill, it's almost a win more talent in a sense, but you're going to be able to heal and just keep pressuring and keep fighting instead of like trading off and dying. So don't undervalue what an instant 25 essence from a takedown can actually provide. That's a big substantial heal. That's a pretty sizable chunk of your health bar. So that's how I kind of see it, as a Li Ming reset, but only on your heal. And that has a 1 second cooldown, so it can go off pretty rapidly. You don't have to wait to heal again. You can just heal, get a kill, heal, get a kill, heal. So I like that a lot. It also just gives you little bursts of early to mid game extra sustain, so you don't have to like go back to the base or go hit the well, for instance. Getting a kill in lane means you can restore a sizable chunk of your health, and we can actually, I mean, we could take some damage here just to see that heal in action. So that's what the full health healer looks like, right? 357 per tick. So imagine that in half, 173 or whatever it is. And that's the impact that a single hero takedown can get. And if you think about that with like Murky or Lost Vikings, suddenly you understand how valuable Hero Stalker can actually be. Not to mention it also helps you build your sacks for tissue regeneration just a little bit faster. Moving on to level 7 with Symbiosis. This reduces Dark Swarm, that's your W. Its cooldown, anytime it hits a hero, that cooldown is reduced by 0.5 seconds. So Symbiosis and Whirling Dervish are kind of what gives this build its name, the Swarm Dehaka. And that's because this thing can just basically, with this Symbiosis talent, it means if you're hitting heroes and reducing its cooldown, if you hit multiple people in this circle multiple times, you can almost spam Dark Swarm and keep it up, you know, virtually permanently during a chaotic team fight where you're surrounded by multiple people. So you're rewarded for diving into 2 or 3 people, obviously not alone, but in the confines of a smart engagement. When you can hard engage on a few folks, pop that W, start resetting its cooldown along the way every time it chunks a hero here and there. You're going to be taking a lot of damage just because you're right in the thick of things. You've got all the sustain that this build provides to help you live through that chaotic moment, all the while doing pretty substantial damage with your Dark Swarm. You'll note that it does 148 damage a second to nearby enemies and deals double that to heroes. So that means you're doing about 300 damage a second at level 23 or whatever for 3 seconds. So 900 damage through the duration with close to full uptime is a lot of damage being dished out from one guy against multiple heroes. If you can keep them in that range, that's substantial. So that's kind of where this build starts to come together. Your sustain essentially supports your W, and that's why it's the Swarm Dehaka. So moving on to level 10, our heroic, we're going to go with Adaptation. After 5 seconds, heal for 60% of the damage that you took over this period. So once you activate it, any damage you take while you're glowing blue and your channel is going off here, once that channel is over, you're going to recover that health back. Let's just go ahead and show this off here. So you'll notice the green bar on our health is indicating what we're going to heal once that is over. So we healed for, I don't know, 1200 or something. I didn't quite see it. So this is just another way that essentially when you make that first move, you can pop your adaptation, you can absorb a lot of hits, and just essentially ignore 60% of it, kind of like a hardened shield that reduces 60% damage as long as you survive throughout the duration of that ability. Now against good teams, they're going to cut their damage off when they see that, but hopefully in the chaos of a fight, if you time it well, if you do it while doing things like jumping into a gate or a keep or the core even, you can mitigate that unavoidable damage. If you're about to get hit by a blizzard or something, you know, you can guarantee that you're going to get some value out of adaptation. And most teams won't be perfect anyway, and sometimes you can keep yourself alive just by scaring people away with adaptation, if they change focus and don't finish you off because they're scared of adaptation's effect, then that can buy you time to impact people with your W, can buy you time to heal with your D, because it does take 5 seconds for your trait heal to go off as well. So there are some kind of accessory benefits to adaptation, even if people play around it well. Moving on to level 13, Whirling Dervish. Reduces the duration of silent stun, slows, and roots against your hero while Dark Swarm is active by 50%. The worst thing that can happen as Dehaka is if you're stunned and you can't get off your D, you can't get off your E, you can't get off your R, all these things that provide you sustain. If you're stunned or silenced, you can be shut out completely, and you need time for these sustain effects to impact the battle and matter. So if you're stunned and just burned through, then you won't have time to sustain and gain the kind of medium to long-term value that your sustain offers. And Whirling Dervish makes sure essentially that you can hard commit without fear of just instantly being locked down, silenced, rooted, all the stuff that makes it very hard for you to impact the fight. And of course, this is also going to be active much more often, thanks to the cooldown reduction from Symbiosis at level 7. So this is going to be up most of the time and discourage people from stunning you, and even when they do, to just limit the impact of those stuns. Moving on to level 16, we're going to choose Rapid Regeneration. Your Burrow heals you for 749 health at level 23 over 2 seconds. So this is really just another way to say, hey, you guys can't hit me right now. I'm going to avoid that precision strike from Nova. And while I'm down here, I'm also going to heal a little bit of health. Now, admittedly, I think this heals for like 600 and something at level 20. Just to give you some more even numbers, I had to level up to show you the 10 stacks here. So it's not the biggest heal. It's smaller than your D heal, of course, as well. But it all adds up, right? It buys you time while you're burrowing, and that's what burrowing is really about in this build, is essentially giving you time for your D to tick off a couple times, for your healer to catch up. It's also adding in a heal with E itself. So it's not the strongest talent necessarily on its own, but it synergizes well with this build. And I don't really love either of the drag talents at level 16 either. They're both kind of win more talents if you're playing Dehaka well and your team is doing well. I think these offer less value than Rapid Regeneration. So take that as you will. If you feel like you got enough health and sustain, I think it's okay. These are comfort picks in some senses, and I'm totally fine with taking either of them. I think all the talents on this tier are a little bit underperforming, so I wouldn't begrudge anyone for swapping out for a favorite talent here. That would not be a mistake as far as this build is concerned. And then finally, at level 20, I'm going to go with Hardened Shield. This is an active talent here on R1. When you pop Hardened Shield, it will reduce all the damage you take for 4 seconds by 75%. So if you take 1,000 damage, it's going to be chopped down to 250 damage. As you can imagine, this is just yet another way for Dehaka to run in, start the fight, hard engage, start causing chaos, pop his W to do tons of damage to people, and not die, because he's popped his 1, and no matter how much they unload on him, it won't matter because he's reducing the damage so much. He's healing with his D, he's healing with adaptation, he's burrowing for a heal, all that stuff that's adding up. He's got so much natural regen from tissue regeneration that without just absolutely absurd amounts of burst or crowd control, there's just no way that this guy's dying right away at the beginning of a fight. Now, do note that there is some anti-synergy between adaptation and Hardened Shield. Adaptation, it's better when you take more damage. It's going to heal you for the damage you take. So if you use both Hardened Shield and adaptation together, then it's not going to work very well, because Hardened Shield is going to reduce the amount of damage you take, and you're going to heal less from adaptation, so it's less total mitigation / regeneration than if you use them separately. So staggering those effects can make a much bigger difference. And do note that adaptation is probably better when you have more health, because there's a risk of you dying during the adaptation channel. If you're at low health, if you start it with 10% health, it takes 5 seconds for it to kick in, you're just going to be dead by the time it kicks in. So opening with adaptation when you're at full health or near, over half at least or something, ensures that you're probably going to live for the 5 seconds that matter. And then you can move into Hardened Shield next. And since they have staggered cooldown durations, 90 seconds versus 60 seconds, kind of works to cast adaptation first anyway. And you shouldn't feel too burdened to get both those cooldowns off instantly since they overlap like that anyway. And there you have it. That is my Swarm Dehaka build. I made him green here just to emphasize all the regeneration and health bonuses that this guy has. So I'll run through the talents one last time. Tissue Regeneration, Hero Stalker, Symbiosis, Adaptation, Whirling Dervish, Rapid Regeneration, Hardened Shield, Swarm Dehaka. Give this build a try. I will emphasize again, this is a day one build. I haven't had the time to test this and tell you for sure that it's the best Dehaka build ever, but I think it has some nice inherent natural synergies and supports the kit and play style of the hero pretty well based on my experience as a 3000 MMR rank 1 player. So take that as you will, test this build out, refine it as you see fit to fit your own playstyles and what you're experiencing as that fresh new Dehaka player. And expect more builds from me in the future as I refine Dehaka, see what other people are playing, and just see what the data supports as far as win rates and popularity for talents is concerned. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, game on.